everybody. Hello and welcome to this Amber and BJ webinar on my DBA journey, a discussion with an alumnus of the Aston DBA program. My name's Ben Mahesson, BJ Membership and Account Manager, and I'm really looking forward to an hour of really interesting insight. Dr. Geoff Parkes, himself an Aston DBA graduate, will chair a discussion on the process of practitioner doctoral study from a student perspective. He'll be joined by a DBA alumnus who will share their own experience of studying and obtaining a DBA from Aston Business School. There will also be the opportunity to ask any questions during a live question and answer session at the end. Shortly, I will hand over to our speaker, Dr. Geoff Parkes, to start the conversation. But before I do, a little bit of housekeeping. If you have any questions about anything being discussed in today's webinar, please post it in the Q&A box or the chat box, and we will either answer towards the end of the session or I will type to you during the webinar. And that's all it. So without further ado, I'd like to hand over to Geoff Parkes. Geoff.
Ben, thank you very much indeed, Ben. Before I begin our discussion with my new colleague, Dr. Flavia Rodix, but I'll let her explain that in a second. I just wanted to perhaps give a little bit of background on Aston, on our DBA program. I'm not going to go into a massive amount of detail. What Flavia and I wanted to do this afternoon is really give you an experience of what the DBA journey is like. If you want more detail on specifics of our program, then everything is contained in our website. There's specific DBA pages on aston.ac.uk. So by all means, check that out. But I'll give you the basics of the program. So Aston University, we're based in Birmingham, in the Midlands in the UK. We're relatively unusual because our business school is almost half the size of our university. So it's a very significant part of the university's activity. We are also what's called a triple accredited business school. And that means we've got Amber, we've got Equus, and we've also got AACSB. There's 100 business schools in the world that have got those 3 accreditations, and we're one of them. So those accreditations, we work hard for. They're big quality endorsements for us as a business school, and it's something that we're very, very proud of. Just a little bit about the DBA program itself at Aston. So it's a very, very well-established program, over 20 years in existence. It's an online program, so we have students. The cohort of students are from all over the world. We have 2 intakes a year in April and September. The way the DBA is structured is that it's year 1 is a taught program. So in year 1, we are all the deliveries online, and all of the year 1 taught program is focused on methodologies, literature reviews. I mean, really the principles of doctoral study is included in year 1, and thereafter for the following circa 3 years, it's into the research, the dissertation, the thesis writing up phase of the program, and you'll be working with one of our academic supervisors on the preparation production of your thesis. It's a part-time program, so all of our students are working in practice in some sort of professional capacity. So we advertise the program as a 4 to 6 year program. As Ben said, I'm an Aston University, Aston Business School DBA graduate. I took just on 4 years to complete the program. It is possible to do it shorter than that. You would need a waiver of our regulations to do it and permission of your supervisors to do it. But typically the program does take 4 to 6 years to complete. And yes, I graduated as a student back in 2015 when I was a commercial finance broker, and I was looking at the impact of the financial crisis on small firms' ability to raise finance. But enough about me. I mean, I'm here today. I'm joined on the panel with my my colleague, Dr. Flavia Rodrigues. Flavia is going to share with us her experience of the Aston DBA, and I'm going to chip in with my own observations. And after that, as Ben says, we'll open the discussion to any questions that our audience has got today. And between us, Flavia and I will answer them. If anything's relevant during the course of the discussion, I'm also going to keep my eyes. I know Ben is on the chat box, so I can also see any questions that might be relevant as they come up. So look, I'm going to kick off by asking Flavia. So Flavia, please perhaps introduce yourself and maybe just reflecting a little bit on why did you do your DBA?
Thank you, Geoff. Hello, everybody, especially the ones attending from all over the world. So I don't know whether I should be saying good afternoon, good evening, good night. And happy to be here and speak about my journey, the 4 years of my journey doing my DBA. So as Geoff said, you're allowed 6 years, but just like Geoff, I managed to finish it in 4 years. So it is possible. And I thought of doing my DBA again to get to embrace further opportunities in my career. So I've come here. As soon as I finished my DBA, I looked up and there were vacancies in Aston University. And I have now joined Aston University in the Aston Business School in the accounting department as a lecturer in accounting. So I am a colleague of Geoff now and happy to be here after living in Hong Kong for 16 years. Wow. So in Hong Kong too, sorry, Geoff.
No, go on.
In Hong Kong too, I was in academia from 2011 with an Australian university, Flinders, and then with the University of Greenwich, and then of course with Kaplan Financials teaching the HKI CPA program and the CPA Australia program. But prior to my academia career, I was in industry as a practitioner with Deloitte for several years. I moved to academia because of family commitments, having 2 children, raising them up. And that's what I got the opportunity to look at academia and I enjoyed it. And hence I thought, okay, I will continue in academia. Now, what made me do DBA? Obviously, I wanted to grow further. And I had intentions to even go back to practice, go back to Deloitte. And it is possible. I could have chosen to go back to Deloitte after finishing my DBA because my thesis was completely relevant to practitioners. It was relevant to industries. I have done a DBA, and that is what's unique about a DBA. A PhD is more academic oriented, but the DBA is something that you take back to your workplace and you contribute in a very big way. Of course, I chose academia because I have been for the last 10 years, and I got an opportunity that opened up into in a new country, new university, and I've got an extension of both teaching and research. And that's what made me continue with academia.
Thanks, Flavia. I mean, and perhaps just gives a little bit of detail about what was your research actually about. I mean, one of the things that we talk about in doctoral study is being able to make a contribution, to produce something different. So, what was your research about? What topic did you look at?
My research topic was on sustainability and environmental reporting assurance, with a focus on materiality in sustainability reporting, stakeholder engagement, assurance qualifications, and my data was focused on an emerging economy, India.
Okay.
Now, when I thought of this topic, Geoff, I looked at what was done and what I could contribute. And sustainability reporting is the hot topic even today, but it's been there for the last 2 decades. And sustainability reporting, there was quite a bit of research already being done, contributions being made. But being an auditor in my earlier career, I actually liked to look at the assurance part. And there was not much research being done. And looking at assurance to make the reports more credible. Just like in financial reporting, what makes it more credible to shareholders is the auditors giving their audit statements. Similarly, for sustainability, especially sustainability is a non-financial reporting. That means you're meeting the needs of so many stakeholders, whether it's society, employees, environment, regulators, policymakers, standard setters. And in that respect, I was very keen to look as an auditor earlier, how could this assurance happen? How can materiality decisions be taken? because it's not number based, and in terms of stakeholders, because that's what you need to engage with stakeholders to decide on materiality. So my contributions were immense. I mean, they were really very strong contributions, not only to academia, but to practitioners, regulators, policymakers, reporting companies. And I'm very happy that this topic is really being something that has helped a wide array of stakeholders rather than just, shareholders or reporting companies.
So it really was a contribution to theory and to practice in that sense, Flavia.
Yes,
It wasn't
in a
just
big
about,
way. No,
yeah,
to
in a big way.
theory,
Okay.
yes, in a big way to practice and theory. And I used a very unique theory which made me look at this issue in a very unique perspective. And that's what brought out rich findings, both in my data and in my contributions.
Okay, I mean, I appreciate these things are always one of the things about a doctoral study, isn't it? Is you get really deep into the topic. But I mean, can you just give us a bit of a flavour of what did you discover on this topic? I mean, what was the big sort of contribution or significant findings from your work? What did you discover?
The significant finding was about the qualifications of the assurers. So in
Right. Okay. Interesting.
sustainability reporting assurance, you have two types of assurers. There are no globally accepted standards as yet, Geoff. So there are two types. You have the accounting assurers, so the big fours, and of course some other firms, but more of the big fours that have taken up sustainability assurance. And you have the non-accounting assurers. But there is a gap there in terms of, are they qualified? Do they understand how to, because these are not quantitative decisions in terms of materiality, they are qualitative. So
Okay.
that is what is the biggest contribution is there was a big gap in the qualifications of the assurers, which again comes down to the assurance standards. So then you're contributing towards standard setters, you're contributing towards policymakers, regulators, and the reporting company. So that is what was my main focus, is the materiality, which is related to obviously the qualifications of assurers, the independence of assurers, rather than have a tick the box exercise or have a management capture and a professional capture, rather than meeting the needs of stakeholders.
Okay, maybe just comment a little bit. I know in my own research, I was looking at entrepreneurs and I was looking at the psychology of entrepreneurial traits in terms of their ability to raise finance. I was a finance broker at the time. I mean, just talk a little bit about, what the data set was and how easy it was to source that data set. And maybe we've got a question from a Phoebe about qualitative or quantitative research. Just talk a little bit about the nature of your data collection, please, Flavia.
Sure. So I used qualitative method, and to be more specific, semi-structured interviews, because that helped me to collect much rich data considering my topic. And I chose an emerging economy, India, because India is big in terms of sustainability reporting assurance, but there was not much research done in India. So I was very keen to understand, how is it being done there in terms of reporting, in terms of assurance, in terms of qualifications. And so I had a wide array of stakeholders as my research participants. So I didn't really only interview the assurers, or I didn't only review the assurance statements or the assurance reports, but I met with regulators, with reporting companies, with policymakers, with NGOs, and these were all professional. They were at a higher level in the organization. They were handling sustainability reporting. So they had very strong knowledge about the subject. And being, it was in the pandemic time, so it was hard, it was difficult to engage, but with technology that was possible. I definitely pursued, send them soft reminders, and they came back full-heartedly. And it was a very enriching experience because I really collected rich data, having semi-structured interviews, using open-ended questions, and that led to more and more rich discussions, and they were very cooperative. And because I had a wider stakeholder array, it gave me a perspective not only of the assurers, what's happening, because there could be an element of bias, So it gave me also the perspective of the reporting company, the perspectives of regulators, policymakers, NGOs, and that together helped me to then make my interpretations in my findings and to bring out my contributions.
Interesting, interesting. I mean, I would say, I mean, in my research, I mean, I did what's called a mixed method study. So I did a little bit of qualitative work, the sort of semi-structured interviews that you did, but the psychometric analysis I did gave me a data set. So for example, somebody was very good on leadership, they'd score a 10. Somebody that wasn't so good would score a 4 or 5, with 60 odd entrepreneurs on a longitudinal study. So I looked at them over time. So in answer to your question, I feel, you know, I would say this, you know, just anecdotally, probably, you know, I'd probably say it's close to 50-50 in terms of the mix between some qualitative studies and quantitative studies. There's no hard and fast rule, as Flavia said. It's about how you go about, you know, solving your research question. It's what you need to know in order to be able to make that contribution. And some of us, you know, are more comfortable, you know, intrinsically with words, I think, and looking at in-depth and meaning. And some of us are more drawn to more quantitative methods. And I think that's just personal characteristics that we've got. I think DBA doctoral study is kind of, you know, it can cope with either of those two things. It's about how you go about answering the questions. So I wouldn't worry too much about that.
Yes.
Just reflecting now, Flavia, on I mean, it's a few years. When did you finish, Flavia? When did you graduate?
I graduated in August 2023.
That's
Very
right.
recently.
It was last year, wasn't it? So I mean,
Yes.
but I mean, obviously, you and I first talked about it when I was based in Hong Kong back in 2018, didn't we? So it was quite a few
Yes.
years ago now. So, I mean, just reflecting on the whole journey, how would you, you know, what would your observations be on the process? I mean, what would you, you know, sitting back and looking at it now, what would you say?
Thank you, Geoff. I think this was a big achievement. You know, just sitting back and
Yeah,
thinking, how did the 4 years go? Definitely a big achievement, especially that you're working full time, you're a mother of children, you know, of 2 kids and all of that. It is an achievement. It opened new doors for me. It gave me the opportunity to present at conferences. Of course, because it was COVID times, travel restrictions, I had to do it online. But I'm sure today for students, they get to go and personally attend and present. Then you're networking with academics, you're networking with your research participants who are from industry, from, you know, the government and NGOs. So you have different types of people you meet. You get to then publish what you have contributed, what you have collected as your hard work. You get to publish them in high-rated journals. And that itself is a big accomplishment. And so it does not stop, actually. It continues, you grow further because then you want to research more, you want to try new research topics, you meet academics, you network with academics, you network with industry, you network with different types of people. And I think, you know, knowledge grows and you just enjoy the entire journey. I was very happy at the end of there was hard work. I would say it's not a bed of roses, but definitely there was a lot of hard work. There was, you know, you had to sacrifice weekends, some social engagements. You had to have a structure in place. You had to say, yes, I have to have a structure in place because I want to finish it in 4 years. So, you know, the first year, of course, is planned by the organization, by Aston Business School. So you have a timetable and each module happens, the assignment happens, and you feel so great. Oh, wow, I managed it. But then from the second year onwards, you have to plan and be disciplined. It is very manageable. And just as you said, Geoff, you and I both finished within 4 years. And I'm
yeah.
sure it's possible even less than 4 years if you get that permission.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
No,
So
I think you're right. I mean, I certainly, you know, you're spot on, Flavia, in terms of it is about ruthless planning with your personal time, isn't it? You've got to be every single
yes,
minute of the day has got to be well thought through. I think the point you make about conference papers is really valid as well. I mean, I think that's kind of it's confirmation, isn't it, that you're on the right lines. You know, you're sharing your ideas with other professional researchers, and you get some good feedback from that
right.
perspective. And I'd also say that, I mean, ultimately, it is about, I don't know how long yours was, Flavia. Mine was circa 65,000 words. Ultimately, it is about producing a written thesis, isn't it? And if you've been to 2 or 3 conferences and you've written 7,000 or 8,000 words for those conferences, then you've already done kind of 25, 30,000 words, haven't you? You're halfway to producing your thesis, aren't you?
Yes, very much. I mean, it's a process, everything falls in place, it's manageable, and your supervisors are great support. They have academic experience, they have industry experience at Aston Business School. So, you're guided really well. But of course, it's your baby. You got to work, you got to plan, and it all falls in place.
So do you think, I mean, if you had to look at the kind of the new skill set that it gave you, in terms of your, suddenly you've got sort of professional research skills. Do you think you approach jobs, the workplace, life differently now that you've undergone this? As you say, it's a significant experience, isn't it? Over a 4-year period. Do you think you approach jobs differently? What would you say?
Definitely, definitely, Geoff. I mean, now even if I go to class or I'm preparing for my lectures, I definitely have a sort of a research approach to preparing my materials. I don't just use textbooks anymore. I go up, Google papers on the topic that I'm teaching, what's happening, what somebody says about that topic, maybe something different. And so, you bring research to your workplace. So
Yeah.
that's what you look at it more critically now. You look at the issues from different perspectives. You analyze the situation. And definitely this helps you when you are, especially at your workplace, you're always faced with what? Making decisions, certain complex problems, complex issues. And because of your research background, that gives you, I mean, it's just a skill that then comes naturally to you. And you start thinking in a different manner. So you think outside the box, you look for resources, you look for evidence, and then you start thinking, yes, I can also look at it this way, and then I make my decision after I think, in a more critical manner about the issue. And that's exactly what I'm doing even now with students, even when I go to the classroom. I mean, it just comes to me that, okay, I'm talking about a topic, but then I have read something outside the book, outside the published recommended books or reality in industry or reality in what's happening in the business world. I take that to the classroom, whether it's with the government or the regulator or.
I mean, I think, look, and Chris is asking an interesting question here, Flavia, because you've described a process of in-depth research, becoming an expert. You kind of get to the finish line, a huge sigh of relief
Really.
as this kind of this job's done kind of thing. But I mean, you obviously want to kind of then continue your kind of academic endeavor and sort of continue to be inquisitive in terms of what's good. How do you keep up to date, just from a practical perspective? How do you keep yourself updated? I mean, is it have you been subscribing to journals, or how do you manage to just keep up to date with the latest that's being discussed in your area?
I mean, today with technology, the resources are much easier
Yeah,
to
easier, aren't
access.
they? Yeah, yeah.
And, if you join Aston Business School as a student, you're given huge amount of resources. The library is great. Then you have Google Scholar and you get the resources again. So I look at that. I read Financial Times. So you got to read some of the interesting or the good newspapers. You read
Mm,
journals. You look at
mm,
other people's research papers or even their PhD thesis if it's relating to your topic. But I would suggest
mm,
more in terms of academic papers in your
mm,
topic.
mm,
And
mm,
Google
mm,
Scholar, even if you have not yet enrolled or you have finished with your studies and you're in industry, you still have Google Scholar that gives you all the resources and you
mm,
can get access to that in a big way. And I'm sure organizations provide you with certain resources because maybe certain papers you have to, subscribe to them or pay for them. And some could
mm,
be
mm,
available just like that on Google Scholar. But for me,
mm,
being
mm,
in academia, I had, the library and I joined Aston Business School soon after that. So
mm,
I have access to all the academic resources, papers that are
mm,
published, journals, books.
mm,
Yeah.
mm,
But again, it's easy. Even if you're in industry, you would be
mm.
having access with technology today.
Yeah, and certainly I discovered that because my research was about access to finance, which at the time was quite a hot topic in the UK. No small firms could find any funding for their expansion plans. The university were able to, because of our contacts in entrepreneurship generally, managed to get some publicity for my research. I was in the Times of London interviewed me about access to finance, and as a consequence of that, then kind of practitioner journals would also wanted to look a little bit more detail in what I discovered. So, as well as being up to speed on on the latest in academic theory, obviously from a practitioner's perspective at the time, I can remember thinking, I've met guys in my industry that otherwise I would never have really been able to network with. Suddenly I think it, I mean, maybe respect's the wrong word, I don't know, but certainly people realized that because of the substantive amount of work a doctorate requires in terms of, rigor, my professional colleagues realized that it must have some value to it. Did you experience a similar kind of, just in terms of your professional contacts?
Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
After I finished my DBA, and even like I am attached to CPA Australia as a professional
Yeah.
body
Okay.
back in
Okay.
Hong Kong, and
Yeah.
definitely they asked me to conduct certain training sessions for members. So CPD, the continuous
Yeah.
professional development
Yeah.
sessions, and share my knowledge, share my experience, talk about materiality and sustainability reporting assurance. And I have access to their resources. So I do have access to professional bodies, resources
Yeah.
in terms of journals and uh, websites and
Interesting. Interesting. So Flavia, I mean, what's obviously you've touched on it a couple of times, but I think that what were the biggest challenges? I mean, clearly time is the big challenge here, but what reflecting on it, is that the single big? I guess that is the single biggest issue, isn't it? Was there anything else that sort of you want any other observations you've got in terms of big challenges?
Yes, Geoff. I mean, time, as I said earlier, is definitely an issue. It's not an issue. It's about just having a structure in place. And what happens is being, with a university, you do have turnover with the staff. So your supervisors could change.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's what happened to me. I had supervisors changing practically every year. So you feel disheartened when you know about it, but truly it did not affect the quality of my thesis. It did not affect my journey in the end. I did feel, because what happened is you're discussing with your supervisor, you get used to the way your supervisor thinks, you think in that manner. And then I used to get disheartened. But the moment the next supervisor came on board, there was a smooth sail. And I managed really well. In fact, I was thinking, should I go with my supervisor that left and joined another university? And then Aston said, don't worry, we can assure you we will give you a very good supervisor. And they kept to that. They kept to that promise. I had a supervisor. I had two supervisors, Geoff. I had a main supervisor and an assistant supervisor. And he stayed on board almost till the end when he also left. But they both continued to, see me through this journey, the last of it. So it was a good
Yeah, no,
journey in the end, but that
and
was a
yeah, and
challenge.
I think that's not untypical. I mean, I think now I'm the program director, so I look after the program here at Aston.
Yes,
And well, like any organization, when you start to look at a 4-year period, inevitably you have staff turnover. But also, I think your observations are right, Flavia. You get quite close to each other, don't you? But you as a
true.
supervisor and as a student, you're kind of working together through this process. So the relationship does build for sure. But I think we as you've said, we work in supervisory teams. It's not just a
Yes,
single supervisor. So there's always a little bit of a safety net there. And I think that and I think that is the way to look at it.
very much.
Um,
Yeah.
I know in my own experience, I mean, I can remember being, I must have been, I think maybe 2 years into it. So 2 years from my, completion deadline that I'd kind of set myself. And I can remember sitting down, it was 1 January, and I think I've still got the paper now, just in handwritten on a piece of paper. I put, you know, 8 squares, and they represented 8 quarters of 2 years. And I went through it systematically and said, right, okay, end of quarter one, I've got to do this. Next quarter, I've got to do this. And I just went through each quarter. And so one was recruit 20, interviewees. quarter 2 was interview them, quarter 3 was do the, I went through it systematically and said, right, okay, I've just got to execute this plan. And it was that level of detail. And when you talked earlier about planning, I think that's the kind of detail that you need to go. Otherwise, you could be there for the rest of your life doing this thing, couldn't you? None of us want that.
Very much.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
You've got to get the job done, basically. So yeah, no, that's so what maybe just going back to the beginning, I guess. I mean, so why did you choose Aston originally? What was your kind of thought process? What was the decision? What were the key, I suppose, there's lots of good MDBAs out there. I mean, what was the key criteria that made you study Aston, choose Aston?
Once I decided to do a PhD or a DBA, initially I thought it was a PhD. And then, of course, I got this opportunity to do my DBA when Aston came to Hong Kong. And,
Yeah.
Geoff came to Hong Kong in 2018. And he,
That's right.
presented and spoke about, I did some research on my own. And what I looked at in terms of, besides your triple accreditation, is that you have Aston Business School provides supervisors with industry experience also. And that was one key thing that I looked at, because I was thinking, being in Deloitte for so many years, it's just that I gave up because of the children. I may go back to Deloitte. And so I would like to do a topic that's related to industry and not just to academia. And that's how I chose the topic. So I was looking at what type of supervisors, because who makes this journey successful? It's the student, yes, but it's definitely the supervisor plays a big role. And since the supervisors in Aston Business School are very professional, both academically and industry experience. And as I said, it's not just one supervisor. So you will have a team. One supervisor may be very strong in the theoretical framework, and that's what guides your research methods and your research design. And so she or he may be more in the academic field, but you'll have the other supervisor who has got the industry experience and who knows your topic deeper. And that's what makes the team, and then you get that support. And that's what made me say, yes, I just want to go ahead with joining Aston. Though Aston didn't start in Hong Kong, they actually continued to only have the program in the UK, but that didn't stop me. And I was very happy to enroll, and I have really been happy. And as I said, I managed to finish it in 4 years, despite it was the COVID years when I was collecting my data. So definitely that was possible only with the backing of your supervisors. And so it's an amazing place.
Yeah, no, I'd agree. I think, and I now work at the university as well. I mean, I think a lot of my colleagues have got similar experiences to yourself, Flavia, in terms of they've as I said, half of our university is almost a business school. Yeah. When we look to hire an academic, we tend to hire people that have got some experience of practice, and they're able to, they're able to orientate any theory or models or academic background to the theoretical work, to the practical workplace. And I think that is something which lends itself to a professional doctoral study, because fundamentally that is what we're doing, isn't it? We're taking theoretical models and we're applying them to the real world. And I think, yes, as a business school, I think that is something that we have got some. That's our focus, essentially, I think. Yes. And no, we didn't go ahead with Hong Kong for a variety of reasons, but this year we are launching in Singapore. So I think we are coming full circle there, Flavia. So that's something that I'm really happy about. So we've got one question here, Flavia. Can you tell us a bit about how you went about discovering the topic? This is a good question. Discovering the topic for your research proposal. I mean, what kind of sparked how did you kind of evolve your thinking to that particular topic, Flavia?
I mean, initially, because, I was an academic in Hong Kong, and I was teaching a topic called ethics and governance. And so I was looking at something in relation to corporate social reporting. And I happened to publish a paper or contribute towards publishing a paper with the Dean of Flinders University at that time on integrated reporting. And
right,
so
okay.
I started thinking about it. Then again, what brought me to think about assurance, to be more specific, was my prior career, and that was being in Deloitte. So again, it went back to industry or practitioner, professional that I was. And then I said, this is something that's the hot topic in companies today. Why not look at the assurance bit? Because I was very
Yeah.
keen to know how can you audit a non-financial report? Because that means it's about stakeholders. It's not about numbers. It's not about your trial balance. It's not about your balance sheet. It's about meeting the needs of so many stakeholders and, the employees and community and society, the strategies that companies use to achieve their goals, but what else is being affected by that. And so, that's what made me think in respect to this topic was definitely my prior career. And of course, I was in academia and I looked at, I did some contribution in terms of integrated reporting. But it's good to see, what are the critical topics in industry, in your workplace that needs contribution and that, is something that you can further expand on and then find out.
I mean, I think that to me is the key thing, Flavia, is what the,
Yeah.
what are the key burning issues? I mean, I think one of the characteristics that we look for in a new DBA student is that degree of inquisitiveness.
Yes.
Here's a phenomena. Why is this phenomena happening? I know in my own, I was looking at why do some firms get finance and other firms don't get finance? And is it down to the individual entrepreneur? What is he or she doing? What behavioral characteristics have these people got in order to be able to determine whether it's a positive outcome or a negative outcome? There's a famous academic, Andrew Pettigrew, said that what he looked for in a research question is some drama. Why is this thing happening? And I think that's you're right to make that point, that I think it is about looking at your industry and just asking yourself, okay, well, we need to discover what the background is to that question and find, and that's the purpose of doctoral study, to try and fill that gap, isn't it? And of course, I guess, Flavia, it's got to be something that you're genuinely interested in, because basically it's going to take over a big chunk of your life for the next 4 years, isn't it? So you need to be sure that it's right for you, don't you?
Very much, yes. Something that you will enjoy, something that you will then continue to, look at further issues in that field through the years after that also.
That's right. I mean, a couple of more questions here, which I was going to get to, but I'll pitch them in now whilst we're on the topic. So, what advice would you give someone, Flavia, who's looking to study a DBA at Aston? And again, I said it's an online program, so wherever you live in the world, you can study our DBA. But what advice would you give to somebody? What would you say?
I mean, it doesn't matter where you are. So definitely if you enroll yourself with Aston Business School, you can definitely be successful with rich data and a good thesis at the end of it because of the guidance that you would get from professionals in Aston Business School. I mean, this is from my experience, okay? So your supervisors. So you will look, when you think of that you want to pursue your DBA, first, of course, your topic. What are you going to look at? You first definitely need to decide. But even if you cannot decide, you can ask Aston Business School to help you with that. And I'm sure they mentor that. They have mentors in your first year. And so, it does help you to then think much closely. If you have a broad view of what you want to do, what should be your research, but you still are not very sure how to narrow that down to your research questions. And that again is part of the journey. So, the good part is if you study with Aston Business School, it's definitely a good school, triple accredited, good professional supervisors. But what you can do is you can study online. I had to go there in person for my first module, but now on, you don't need to go there. But I would recommend, at least when you defend your thesis, you must go there because that's a unique experience of your Viva. Again, that's not mandatory. They do organize that online. So it's amazing. So I would say the professional qualifications of the supervisor matter. What does the supervisor understand in terms of theoretical framework that will guide your research design? Who are your supervisors? What are their backgrounds? And that is what, if you look at in Aston Business School, I think you will feel confident that yes, my journey will be, a good one, though it does amount to a lot of hard work. It amounts to a lot of time that you need to be sure that you will commit yourself to, but the resources, the type of supervisors is what you can be assured about. And of course, their support to finish it within 4 years. If you give them that, if you work on it and you say, I want to finish it, and that is where they will be with you in that journey. So
I
that's
mean, I
the good
guess,
part.
yeah, I mean, and also, I mean, Natalia is asking here, Flavia, about when you move from the taught phase of the program into this supervisory relationship.
Yeah.
Maybe if you can just give us a little bit of an insight of, I mean, how often did you meet them? Were there specific tasks you were given at each stage? I mean, how did you kind of, because you're on a kind of treadmill, aren't you? And you want to try and keep making progress. Just give us a bit of
Yes.
insight into how practically did you do that?
For me, it was amazing. Okay. With my supervisors, I really developed a very close rapport, and I would meet with them once a month. And as you progress, after you finish your QR stage, which is called a qualifying report stage, where you are sure about your research topic, you have like a mini viva, and then that's when you start meeting them even twice a month. And as you progress closer to writing your chapters of your thesis, then you probably meet them once a week also, if you need it.
Okay.
But you can send them emails and they would respond immediately. So sometimes you don't need to meet them. So, initially they could meet you once in 2 months. But the moment you need that support, you're writing, you're collecting data, you need something. And if you need a discussion, they are ready to support you. I had no issues in terms of that, even if they were busy. As they would identify when I would send them an email saying, this is what I want to discuss. And they knew that, yes, a meeting was required, and they would meet with me. So once a month, definitely, but even more frequent as you progress in your journey and you need that guidance, you need them to go through your work. You send it to them, then they come back with comments, then you meet them, you discuss your next plan. And it's been good. I mean, I've definitely had great experiences with my supervisors, even though they've changed every year. But I had about 3 or 4 supervisors, but fantastic experience with each of them.
Okay. Thanks, Flavia. We've got 1 or 2 questions just coming in to the last sort of 15 minutes as well. So I think I'm just going to, question here from Max. I've already mapped out a topic. How should I proceed to further confirm that it makes sense? I mean, we have an account manager, Max. If you go onto our website, you can make an appointment to speak to him, a guy called Adam Robinson, really good guy. He can kind of guide you through the application process, and we have a template for the proposal which you can complete, and Adam can guide you through that. At what point do I decide my research topic? I mean, as Flavia has explained, you need to, there's got to be something that sparks your inquisitive side of your personality, that there's something here that you want to discover more of. So I think, Flavia, that's quite important to at least grasp. Obviously your ideas change, don't they, over time? But at the outset, there's got to be a nub of an idea, hasn't there, that kind of has sparked your interest, I guess, right up front.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah, I think that's right. Yeah. Do you find that the workload of each? Did you find that the workloading of each year of the DBA years was similar, and that the initial work-life DBA balance stayed fairly constant? That's a good question. What do you think of that, Flavia? Was the pain the same every year, Flavia, then? Or?
No, not definitely not the same every year. The first year I said, it's such a structure by the university that it just, I mean, it's so structured for you. You just have to do what is said, each module, each assignment. So, I mean, the first year is not very difficult but then after that, especially once you start writing, then also, I mean, finding out about your research participants, how would you get them? How would you network? How would you send them emails? Identifying what form. You may be using quantitative, you may be using qualitative, you may be using a mixed approach. So in that manner, and then of course, the writing stage definitely needs a focus. So the last 6 months of my DBA, that's because I wanted to finish it in in the 4 years. But
Yeah.
you are given 6 years because you're a part-time student, because you're working.
That's right.
Okay, so you can carry on and extend that. But because I intended to finish, as I started a DBA much later in my life, because I was a financial auditor before that. So that's what made me take the last 6 months time off from work, and I just focused on my writing.
Okay. A couple more
Yeah.
questions here. Just one on research costs. I mean, this inevitably is a bit of a balance. I mean, I don't think I I sourced my interviewees myself, so there was no real cost involved. Although you are allowed a research budget, I think it's £1,500 to go
Yes.
towards any aspect of the the work required to complete your thesis. So I think that's obviously there is some funding now, Flavia, isn't it? If you need to access
Yes.
some finance. Agri-finance in sub-Saharan Africa. I mean, certainly we have academics within the finance field that would be able to help you, Amalabaki, in that particular topic. What is the platform? The platform we use, Motaz, is a thing called Blackboard. It's a very well-known platform for higher education. I mean, other places use Moodle and all sorts of things. We use Blackboard. It's a very well-established platform for this kind of Galani, I hope we haven't put Galani off, Flavia. She said the element of drama was a key takeaway from this chat. So, look, I think it's important I don't know what you think, Flavia. It's important to engage with this process. It's an element of personal development. You've got to see it as a real positive, as a real acquiring new skills and new abilities. But I mean, I was also going to ask you, Flavia, I mean, in terms of how has it, I mean, in the broadest sense, I guess, impacted your career and professional development? I mean, just maybe put that into a bit more context. What would you say?
Now I'm in the
From a
US, I
career,
said.
from a
Yeah.
career perspective, yeah. I mean,
From a career perspective, it has opened new doors for me. And I definitely had opportunities in industry, as I said earlier, and in academia. It's just that I chose academia because I have been in academia for the last 10 years and I have been enjoying working with students. But yet from Hong Kong, I immediately could move to the UK, to a new country, new type of universities, more exposure in terms of research. So that's what opened up for me after a DBA. And if I had
yeah,
to
and
go back to industry too, I'm sure every industry, whether it's practitioner industry or, financial industry or a manufacturing industry, today innovation is the key factor for success. So what brings innovation? Again, research. So that's where you start contributing in every industry with your experience and the skills that you pick up while you are in this journey for 4 years. It is definitely a learning experience. I mean, lots of skills that you develop in these 4 years, whether it's networking, whether it's thinking critically, whether it's, analytical mind, all of
I
this.
mean, look, and it's obviously, it's Dr. Flavia Roddick's, isn't it? You were recognised. You've got the highest qualification any
Yes.
professional academic can get. I mean, it's that's a recognition that you've looked at something and you're an expert in it, and that's
The
what you're working
expert
towards.
word is the correct thing. You become an expert in your field. I mean, of course, you got to look at it further as you are working or in whether it's in industry or in academia. You definitely look at the developments. How can you then research on something else in that field? It could be a new field because now you've got the skills. So it does not need to
Right.
be just in that field. But of
It's-
course, it's your research interest.
Matt, I think you're asking about the cost of the DBA. I mean, I guess that's always an issue. I think there are schools more expensive than us, and there are schools cheaper than us. I think it's it's not something that. I mean, have a look at our website. As I said, I mean, I can see Adam's online here. Drop him an email. His email details are there, and we can talk about the cost structure and exactly what the what the fees are. Flavia, we're just coming up to the last kind of 10 minutes or so. Any kind of closing comments you think we haven't covered? I mean, I think we've kind of hopefully been through your journey and reflections on it. Anything else you'd like to say? Any other questions out there as well? Please put them into the chat box, and we can in the remaining time we can try and answer them. Anything else, Flavia, you'd like to comment on?
I mean, what I would like to say at the end of it is I made the right decision of, taking up doing a DBA. You think of it, oh, it's going to be 4 years or it's going to be 6 years. And, what's going to happen in these 4-6 years. But after I have finished it, I am really, really glad that I continued and made that decision. And it was a great journey. So, you
Excellent.
feel good. As you said, you have achieved the highest qualification. That when I went to graduate at the graduation ceremony, you feel so, what would I say, accomplished with your life, because what happens is you have a career, then you have family, and then when you see there are more opportunities and you take that up, and at this age with 2 teenage children, and you managed it, and with work, it's a complete different feeling. It's an accomplishment. Of course, I'm sure anyone doing a DBA does it with choice, out of your choice. You definitely have a plan in mind. You don't just enroll like you would enroll for a master's or for an undergrad. So definitely this is something that's done by choice, or at least I took it up by choice, because I was looking at what I can now carry on for my future once the children have grown up, and I can have a full-time career, new opportunities, and that's exactly what has happened, and I'm very happy about it.
Thanks, Flavia. I mean, just a couple more questions come in here. Mabs, I think the thing to do is to if you drop Adam a line, we can talk about. I know there is depends where you are and that kind of thing. But just drop Adam a line, and he can advise on the fees and the way they're structured. Okay, Chukwu. Normally it's a master's degree. Again, I mean, I think drop Adam a line. He's got all the details of specifically what the academic qualifications are. But normally it's a master's degree. Some professional qualifications also would be an equivalent level. Wilfred, I mean, I think this is a question we often get asked about. Could you have finished the DBA before the 4-year mark? I mean, as I said, I mean, when Flavia's commented on it, we both managed to get it in just on the 4 years. I mean, I think it is a substantial amount of work. It is feasible to get it within 4 years. It has been done. It does require a waiver of our regulations. Ultimately, it's a test of, has this piece of work, in the view of your exam, in the view of your supervisors, has this piece of work passed that test of making an academic and professional contribution? And in that sense, it doesn't matter when you finish it, but to be able to gather the data and do the analysis whilst taking a full-time job, that's why our 4 to 6 year period is in there. So in answer to the question, yes, it is, but very typically, and in most instances, it is that 4 year. I know Flavia's described it as a target, and I had the same target she did, and we were both able to do it in that kind of that time frame.
There's
How
another
exhaustive?
question on
Yeah.
I think the literature review, and
Yeah, go on, Flavia. You answer that one. Go on.
does a clear research gap need to be identified? No, not really at that stage. If you have just, something that you're interested in, that's what matters, then you can go through Google Scholar, start looking up in terms of that topic, what you are interested in, what has been done, so that you could write something saying this has been done, give some references of one or few papers, and then you say, I am looking to extend on what is being done. But definitely you don't need to know everything about it, or you don't need to come up with your definite research questions at this stage, because you are new to research.
Absolutely. I mean, all we're looking for in the proposal stage, we're looking for someone who can engage with academic practice. They're showing evidence that this is perhaps a new world they're moving into after being in practice. It operates in a different way. There are different standards. There are different ways of doing things. And what we're looking for in the proposal stage is somebody that's exhibiting those characteristics that they're able to engage with, academic practice. And that's what we're looking for. Inevitably, as Flavia says, your proposal is going to change, and your ideas will change as we give you more skills. And you, this is a process of discovery. As you discover more, your ideas change. But at the outset, we're looking for somebody who can, show willingness and the ability to be able to engage in this new world. For sure, Siddharthan, academic careers, academia is, it's based on, on qualifications, and to have a DBA or a PhD, You know, I have a DBA, and I'm now an associate professorial teaching fellow, and I can become a professor, which is what my ambition is to do one day. So, you know, the DBA is becoming a recognized, and as research generally becomes more needed to be engaged with practice and the outside world, and what difference does it make? Why are we doing this research? Of course, that plays into the hands increasingly of DBA scholars, because everything that we do is about engaging with practice. And yeah, you know, in terms of, you know, I've got an MBA, and that kind of gave me the, a long time ago, but I mean, it gave me I reflected on it before I started my DBA journey. So it is very, it's a business qualification. You know, it is something which, for sure, you know, MBA graduates typically would be interested in studying a DBA. Okay, I mean, look, I think we're just coming up to the hour, Flavia. I mean, I think, Ben, if you're still there, I think we've tried to work our way through those questions as we've gone. I think we've done a reasonable job. I think we've kind of been through what Flavia and I set out today to talk about. I think my experience of the Aston DBA very similar to Flavia's. I was a practitioner when I was a finance broker when I embarked on my DBA. One of my ambitions was always to, you know, to work one day in academia. I'm still a consultant. I'm still a non-executive director outside of academia, but I still spend some of my time now as a practicing academic. And you know, that kind of portfolio lifestyle has suited me, was something I always wanted to do, and that's something which I'm now quite interested in. So yeah, I think Ben, I think we've just about done the job there, I think.
Absolutely. No, it's been absolutely brilliant. The questions coming in have been amazing. Just trying to keep on top of how many questions came through, and you got through them so quickly. It's impressive.
Okay, well, thank you to you as well, Ben. Okay, and thanks, Flavia, for your time here. You know, I think I'm a great believer. I took over the role of director of the DBA program back in last September, and I wanted to give, you know, both existing students and also, you know, alumni the voice to prospective students. I think it comes a lot better from guys that have been through the process and are going through the process, which of course, Ben, is the topic of our next webinar, isn't it? When we're getting some existing students to contribute. Okay, over to you, Ben.
Jeff. Thank you,
Thanks,
Ben.
Flavia.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you. Well, yeah, and first of all, I'd like to thank, of course, yourself, Geoff, and Flavia for amazing discussion. There's so much to take down. And if anything, I struggle to actually write down all the information. But luckily, and for everyone who's watching today, is that this will be recorded and this will be posted on our website and YouTube page in the coming weeks. So keep an eye on that and take the notes from there. And yeah, I'd like to thank everyone again for joining, for your amazing questions, your interactions. It's been an incredibly stimulating conversation, and look forward to the next presentation. So thank you once again, Flavia and Geoff. And thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank
you. Have
you,
a great
Ben.
rest of your day now.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you.
Thanks, Flavia. Take care. See you soon.
You.
Bye. Bye, Ben.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.